An Introduction to the Science of Hadith by Ibn Salah al-Shahrazuri, 577 to 643. The most influential work on the science of Hadith in existence. The transmitter should not refrain from relating Hadith to someone on account of that person having an impure motive for learning Hadith, for it is to be hoped that he will obtain the necessary intention later on. We heard that Ma'mar said, people used to say, knowledge should not be refused to the man who seeks it for something other than the sake of God in order that knowledge be for God. He is great and exalted. On the contrary, let the transmitter eagerly spread his knowledge, striving for a rich reward. Some of the pious forebears used to attract people to their hadith, including Urwa bin Zubair, God be pleased with him. God knows best. Let the transmitter follow the example of Malik, God be pleased with him, about which Abu al-Qasim al-Furawi, that is Abu Bakr, or Abu al-Fath Mansur ibn Abdul Mun'im al-Sa'idi, informed us in Nishapur. He said, Abu al-Ma'ali Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Farisi transmitted to us. He said, the expert Abu Bakr Ahmed ibn Hussein al-Bayhaqi informed us. He said, the expert Abu Abdullah al-Hakim informed us. He said, Ismail ibn Muhammad ibn Fadl ibn Muhammad al-Sha'rani informed me. He said, my great-grandfather transmitted to us. He said, Ismail ibn Abi Uwais transmitted to us. He said, when Malik ibn Anas wanted to transmit, he used to perform his ablutions, sit on the edge of his bed and comb his beard. He sat erect, displaying gravity and reverence, and transmitted. He was also asked about that, and he said, I'd like to honor the hadith of the Messenger of God. I transmit only in a state of ritual purity, sitting up straight. He used to dislike transmitting hadith in the street or while standing or in haste. He said, I like to try and understand what I transmit from the Messenger of God. It is also related that before teaching hadith, he used to perform the major ablution, fumigate his beard with incense, and put on scent. If someone raised his voice in his class, he scolded him, saying, God be exalted. Those of you who believe, do not raise your voice over that of the Prophet. Whenever someone raises his voice during the recitation of the hadith of the Messenger of God, it is as if he raised his voice over that of the Messenger of God. We heard or read that the jurist Muhammad ibn Ahmed ibn Abdullah said, when the reciter of hadith of the Messenger of God, peace be upon him, stands up for anyone out of special respect when that person enters the room, a sin is recorded against him. It is better for him, as well as the participants in his class, to follow what was reported from Habib ibn Abi Thabit, who said, it is sunnah for a person to receive the people, all of them, in a kindly fashion when he transmits hadith to them. God knows best. The transmitter should not reel off the hadith in such a fashion that some of them cannot be grasped. Let the transmitter open and close his class with an invocation and prayer appropriate for the occasion. One of the most eloquent ways to open a class is by saying, the most perfect praise belongs to God, Lord of the worlds, under all circumstances. The most complete prayers and peace on the chief of the messengers, whenever the heedful remember him, and whenever the heedless neglect to remember him. God pray over him, his family, and the rest of the prophets, the family of each of them, and the rest of the righteous to the greatest extent that is right to ask for. It is desirable for a knowledgeable transmitter to convene a session for the dictation of hadith, for it is one of the highest classes of transmitters. Audition is such a session in one of the best and strongest ways to take up hadith. When the crowd is large, let him take on a repetitor, mustamli, to broadcast for him. That is the custom of the greatest transmitters, who undertook something like this. It was related that Malik, Shu'bah, Waqi, Abu Asim, Yazid ibn Harun, and a large number of other prominent early figures did just that. Let his repetitor be educated and alert, in order that what he heard about Yazid ibn Harun not befall him. Yazid was asked about hadith and said, several idda transmitted to us. His repetitor shouted to him, Abu Khalid, who is several's father? He replied, several, son of may I lose you. Several, son of may I lose you. Let the repetitor do this, repeating be elevated on a chair or something similar. If he cannot find anything suitable, let him perform his standing duty. He has to adhere to the wording of the transmitter and pass it on completely without any divergence. The benefit of the action of the repetitor is that someone who hears the words of the dictator from a distance attains an understanding and confirmation of what he is saying through the announcing of the repetitor. Those who hear only the speech of the repetitor, that is, those who cannot hear the dictator at all, Do not thereby gain permission to relate the material directly from the dictator without explaining the circumstances. A discussion of that appeared above in category 24. It is recommended that the class be opened with someone reciting part of the exalted Quran. When he finishes, if there is some noise, the repetitor should ask the participants in the class to be silent. Then he said, "In the name of God, the compassionate and the merciful, praise be to God, he is blessed and exalted, and invoke blessings on the messenger of God," trying to be as eloquent as possible in that, and turn to the transmitter and say, "Whomever you mention or whatever you mention, may God bless you, or may God have mercy on you," or something similar. God knows best. Every time the transmitter mentions the Prophet, peace be upon him, he should invoke blessings upon him. Al-Khatib said that he should raise his voice for that. When he comes across a mention of a companion, he should say, "God be pleased with him, radiyallahu anhu." It befits the transmitter to praise his teacher appropriately when he relates that from him. Indeed, several of the pious forebears and scholars did that. For example, it is related that when Ata ibn Abi Rabah transmitted from Abdullah ibn Abbas, he said, "The sea of knowledge, al-Bahr, transmitted to me," and that Waqil said, "Sufyan al-Thawri, the prince of believers in hadith, transmitted to us." More important than that is the prayer for the teacher at the mention of his name. Let the transmitter not neglect that. There is nothing wrong with the transmitter referring to someone he relates from a nickname, laqab. He is known as Gundar, troublemaker, is the nickname of Muhammad ibn Ja'far, the student of Shu'bah, and Luwayn, party-coloured, is the nickname of Muhammad ibn Sulaymi al-Misisi, or he may refer to a teacher by a maternal reference he is known by, for example, Munya as the mother, or it is said the paternal grandmother of the companion Yahya Ya'la bin Munya, and his father Umayyah. He may also refer to his teacher in reference to a bodily infirmity he was known for instance, Sulayman al-A'mash, the bleary-eyed Sulayman, Asim al-Ahwal, cross-eyed Asim. All of this may be done unless the person who referred to dislikes it. That was the case of Ismail ibn Ibrahim, known as Ulayya. Ulayya was his mother, or it is said his maternal grandmother. We heard Yahya bin Ma'in used to say, "Ismail ibn Ulayya transmitted to us." Ahmed ibn Hanbal forbade it. He said, "Say Ismail ibn Ibrahim." I read that he did not used to like being referred to by the name of his mother. Yahya bin Ma'in replied, "We accept that from you, teacher of what is good." It has been recommended that the transmitter dictate hadith from a number of his teachers, giving first the one with the most elevated isnad for the best or the best for some other reason. He should dictate a single hadith from each of his teachers, choosing the hadith with elevated isnads and other short texts. That is best and most appropriate procedure. He should be discriminating in the hadith he dictates and carefully consider the material he is to teach. He should draw attention to the lesson and the elevation of the hadith and what makes it special. He should avoid those things which the intellect of those present cannot grasp, and those things he fears will introduce a misconception into their thinking. It was a custom of some of those we have mentioned to conclude the session of dictation with stories, humorous tales, verses with their isnads, and that is fine. God knows best. When the transmitter finds himself incapable of bringing forth a hadith he wants to dictate, there is nothing wrong with his asking one of the experts present at that moment for help and his bringing it forth for him. Al-Khatib said, "A number of our teachers used to do that." When the session of dictation is finished, there is no dispensing with collating the material, checking that it is accurate, and correcting what became corrupted by a slip of the pen or an ink blot. These are the key guidelines for the transmitter. We will be content with them in order to avoid prolixity by discussing matters which are either less important or obvious and unambiguous. God is the one who grants success, and he knows best. Stay tuned for category 28 and many more parts.